Greetings, Rob
Hey,
Ryerse.
hey, thank you, Dan. I was just about were you
You're
nervous
jamming
I
out.
wasn't going to
You
jump
were
in there?
jamming out, man. You're just loving the intro song.
I do. I always love the intro song, especially when it plays nonstop behind the podcast. Hey, everybody! It's good to see you today. My name is Robb Ryerse. I'm alongside with Dan Deitrich. I'm as our fearless leader, Doug Padgett, would say, somewhere outside of Fayetteville, Arkansas. Dan, you are firmly ensconced in South Bend, Indiana.
That's right.
Yeah, well, Doug's going to be back with us. I thought today, but apparently not. So texted him yesterday and said, hey, do you have a minute to chat? And he said, well, I'm sitting on the beach. So I said, how about we chat on Wednesday when you're back? So Doug should be back soon. Hopefully he's in flight right now from his much-deserved vacation. But we are going to be talking some politics today in his absence on the Common Good Politics podcast, which we do every Tuesday. A little bit later in the show, a really, really intriguing candidate from Kansas is going to be with us. He's running for Congress, and he's got a really great story. Hopefully, you'll stick around to hear that. Dan, it's a big day.
Is it?
Do you have? Yeah. It's the politics podcast. We had to stay
what?
abreast of these things. What are your State of the Union watching plans for tonight?
Well, the big question is, when does it start? Because it seems like it starts right around bedtime for my kids, and so that's
9 p.m. Eastern.
I think I can get them in bed by then. So I'm gonna curl up on the couch.
Yeah, your kids have a much later bedtime than mine do. Apparently,
I've got a middle schooler. You know, it's a different world.
My bedtime is 9 p.m. So, are you planning on watching the State of the Union? I have to be honest. These types of political theater that don't feel like actually substantive typically don't capture my attention very well. I don't normally watch much, in political conventions, State of the Union addresses. I'm often meh about.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm gonna watch tonight.
Really?
I figure if any, I know.
Just catch the highlights.
Yeah, if anything important happens, I'll hear about it on Twitter, and I'll be able to have a hot take, then. But I don't know. What do you think the president needs to do in the State of the Union address tonight to be effective? It feels like he's in the midst of kind of a political comeback in some ways. That his presidency seems to be finding its footing a bit, and tonight, I guess, is a big opportunity for him to take some steps forward in that regard. Do you have any sense of what you'd like to see from the president tonight?
Yeah, I think he really just has to list the things he has accomplished. He's taken a lot of heat for the things that haven't gone through and haven't gotten done, and taken a lot of blame for things that aren't actually in control of any president. Gas prices and inflation. Like, there are certain things a president can do, but largely those are outside of his control. But just list the things that the Biden administration has done and accomplished. And with everything happening in Ukraine, I think this is the time when a calming, sane presence from the President of the United States is so critical. And I think that's something that Joe Biden does pretty well.
Yeah. I think, from the political optics side of things, a State of the Union address doesn't seem to play to Joe Biden's strengths as a politician. He's not a Ronald Reagan. He's not a Barack Obama that is just a really kind of captivating public speaker. They can give a speech and you're like, that's not the essence of what makes him attractive to people. So my hope is they keep it short, sweet, kind of punchy and positive, and get out of there. So, I am I'm also real interested in, in the responses. This is like the big thing now is, responses to the State of the Union address.
Yeah, and there's always
Uh,
been like a Republican response or opposite party response, but this
yeah,
time there's a squad response. Is that right?
yeah, yeah, and not just that. Bernie Sanders has done responses in the past. I'm not sure if he's going to be doing that this time around. Um, Colin Allred from Dallas, Texas, congressman, is going to be doing a response on behalf of the Congressional Black Caucus. And Rashida Tlaib from Detroit, who's part of the squad, and um, kind of made famous for a lot of reasons for, kind of the spicy language she uses sometimes. She's going to be giving a response, I think, on behalf of the workers families party or something along those lines. I'm not sure exactly, but it's going to be interesting. I'm actually real curious to see how those go. So it's a big day, State of the Union address. It's also a big day, Dan, because it's election day.
It is.
Did you know it? Did you know it's election day?
I did.
It is election.
Just moments ago, realized that in Texas, it's election day.
It is election day in Texas. Today is a day that the primary election is taking place in Texas. And, it's a very exciting thing. There's, Texas is going to be choosing the Democratic Party and the Republican Party in those states are going to be choosing who their nominees are going to be for various offices. And it's the first primary election of the 2022 season. And there's one race in particular that I'm watching real closely in Texas 28, which is a congressional district in South Texas. There is a human rights lawyer named Jessica Cisneros who is running against an incumbent congressman, Henry Cuellar. Henry Cuellar is maybe the most conservative Democrat in the House of Representatives. He voted against the Biden infrastructure bill. He is pro-life, which, you don't see a lot of pro-life Democrats on the national stage. He is oftentimes on border issues, much closer to the Trumpian side of things than you would expect a Democratic congressman to be. And so he is, this seat has been targeted by progressive Democrats for a long time. He's actually he's first began serving in Congress in 1987, then spent a few years as the Secretary of State of Texas under Rick Perry, and then went back to Congress. He's been there a long time. He is tremendously powerful in South Texas. And in 2020, Jessica Cisneros came within 3 points of beating him in the Democratic primary. And now she's doing it again, and she's running it back, taking what she learned from her campaign in 2020 and challenging him. She would be a member of the squad. She's endorsed by Justice Democrats. She's endorsed by Brand New Congress. She's endorsed by the Sunrise Movement. She is in that brand of progressive Democrats. She is fantastic. She's amazing. And I got to say, I am unashamedly rooting for her. And I know that there's some people, and if Doug were on the podcast today, he might be saying, there's some people that don't really like primary challenges. I tend to think that just because you hold a seat doesn't mean it's your seat. And if the purpose of politics is to represent the people, and if someone thinks they can do a better job of doing that, well, that's what elections are for. Yeah. And just because you're a sitting congressman doesn't give you some kind of right to never be primaried. But it's a philosophical thing. So I am unashamedly rooting for Jessica to knock off Henry Cuellar. And kind of on top of this, I don't know, Dan, if you're familiar with this race at all, but the end of January, just a few weeks ago, Henry Cuellar's office in Laredo, Texas, and his home was raided by the FBI.
That's right. Yeah.
And he's not been charged. There's not been any word of like what that's all about. But my, oh my, like
It's not
the
a good
FBI
look.
no. No. Like I mean, listen, people are innocent until proven guilty. We don't even know what he's innocent or guilty of because there's no charges have been filed. There's been no reporting on what's going on. It might not, he might not even be the target of this investigation. It might be some associate. But listen, does anybody want the FBI knocking at your door? And you think about whatever it is, this close to an election, the FBI investigate or, raiding the home of a sitting congressperson. I mean, like, I'm not a big fan of the, where there's smoke, there's fire cliche, but man, there's like,
there has, for the FBI to raid your house, there's a certain level of, there's got to be something there that gives them permission to do that.
Yeah.
But,
so it's a big day in Texas. Going to be watching, rooting for Jessica, not just because, Henry Kuehler might be under investigation by the FBI. Not rooting for her just because he's been in office forever. And since I was, 12 years old, not rooting for her simply because she's a young Latina woman. But for all of these reasons, and she's a great human being.
That's awesome. She sounds incredible.
I've had a chance to meet her, and she's fantastic. So,
is this one of the cases though where like the only way for a Democrat to be elected in Texas is for them to basically be a Republican? Like, is this a situation where a progressive primary challenger wins the primary, but is doomed to not succeed in the general?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. No, this is a safe Democratic seat.
Okay.
This guy is just really conservative.
Huh. Okay.
And and as a result, and has been in power so long, he hasn't had any challenges. So it's like when AOC beat Joe Crowley, it's like when Cori Bush beat Congressman Clay. I can't remember his first name. And
so like the primary is the race, really.
The primary is the race.
Gotcha.
Yep. So it's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Now, listen, probably, Texas is going to be on our minds, later today watching election results, but certainly Ukraine has been on our minds for all of us. Dan, let me start before we kind of get into the serious stuff about Ukraine. I have two things so far that I have learned. I mean, first of all, it's Ukraine, not the Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we were all saying
how did it become
Ukraine?
The Ukraine?
It's like the Ohio State University. Listen, apparently the got dropped at some point. Also learned that it's pronounced Kyiv, not Kiev.
Yeah. Kiev is kind of the Russian version, and they're like, nope, it's not that.
Yeah. So that's those are good things to know. On a little lighter note, do you have a favorite like Ukrainians are badass kind of story that is kind of captured your imagination?
There's so many. It's kind of wild, like just how brave and brazen these Ukrainians are. Yeah, I don't know if it's the grandma making Molotov cocktails or the woman that goes up to the soldier like, here's some sunflower seeds to put in your pocket so that when you die on Ukrainian soil, it grows sunflowers.
Just amazing. I mean, the fantastic news yesterday that the guys on
the Snake Island,
the Snake Island soldiers were not killed after all.
I was so happy to hear that.
I know. Just really just been fantastic. It's Vanessa made this observation to me. She said the other day when we were talking about it that like Ukrainians, all these stories coming out, they are doing what Americans wish they could do. Like they have this, it's this thing of like, we have kind of this national sense of like, oh, we're folksy and tough, and we don't really have that many stories to back it up. Thankfully, I guess, because that means your country's being invaded. But these Ukrainians are showing just in so many just remarkable ways the kind of strength that they have. So we often talk about Donald Trump in hopes that this guy will just continue to go away. And, he's not. He had some comments about the Ukraine, tying together, interestingly, Putin, the Ukraine, and the southern border of the United States.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen to what that former guy had to say.
Here it is.
I said, this is genius. Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. Oh, that's wonderful. So Putin is now saying it's independent, a large section of Ukraine. I said, how smart is that? And he's going to go in and be a peacekeeper. That's the strongest peace force. We could use that on our southern border. That's the strongest peace force I've ever seen. There were more army tanks than I've ever seen. They're going to keep peace all right.
There's a lot there.
Okay, first of all, can we talk about how weak the former president's voice sounds? Like he doesn't sound good. He sounds like he's aged, right? Like I don't know. Like that's the first thing that comes like that strikes me. Second thing, did you hear him correct himself when he said the Ukraine?
Yeah.
Because that's a thing now. We've learned. He's learned. We've all learned this together. It's good to know that the former president is learning along with all of us.
I'm surprised he caught on, but yeah.
So he seems to be praising the strategy of Vladimir Putin, just declaring parts of the Ukraine independent and then moving in, a glorious, smart peacekeeping force, as he calls it. I don't know, Dan, how's this hit you?
It's just like the constant praise of dictators from Trump and by association the Republican Party, because they refuse to contradict the president in this almost to a T. There's the Mitt Romney outliers, but when asked about it, a lot of Republicans are like, well, I can't speak for the former president. I can just speak for myself. They're afraid to even say what Trump is saying about Putin is wrong. So that's wild. But just like the childish, obsession with big tanks and like I've never seen so many tanks. This guy is the best. I don't know. Just seems like so easily impressed by things that are not good. It's not a good thing or a clever thing to just lie and make up reasons for invading another country. That's not anything that should be praised on any level. Just because you thought it up, oh, you're a smart guy because you thought up I can't.
Pretext by which to invade your neighbor. And yeah, seriously. And, it's just amazing to me that, I mean, Putin is right now, the most vilified man on earth, right? The world seems to be just so united against what is happening in Ukraine that, it's the political instincts of the former president to align himself with someone who is just nearly universally vilified is just kind of remarkable. I get, all of the stereotypes and the accusations of Trump's loyalty to Putin and Putin helping him get elected, this kind of statements like this like don't help those go away, do they? Like they reinforce like, what is this guy's obsession with it? Why is he loyal to that guy?
Yeah, and why are people loyal to him still? So you have things like these was the Freedom
Caucus,
and the PAC that they have, and this whole big event, the America First Political Action Conference that happened over the weekend, and they broke out in chants of Putin's name at this conference, like.
Yeah, this, and I've got one more comment on Trump, but I just one little thing on this thing with Marjorie Taylor Greene speaking at this America First Political Action Conference that was kind of running in competition with CPAC, which is the Conservative Political Action Committee. Marjorie Taylor Greene spoke at this event along with Representative Gosser, who is kind of a creepy old man. Not kind of a creepy old man, is a creepy old man.
Epitome of.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is, widely criticized for, speaking at this event that was regarded as a white supremacist event. And she is now, and tell me if you can remember this ever happening, she is now distancing herself from this. She said, I didn't know anything about them. I've never met Nick Fuentes, who is kind of the leader of this. I didn't know what their views are. Have we ever seen Marjorie Taylor Greene backpedal or try to put some distance between herself and a group like this? I found that kind of striking and might be significant in some way.
But at the same time, like, it was a pretty soft backpedal, because at the same time she's like, but I don't want to write off these boisterous young members of the Republican Party that are getting canceled by everyone else. Yeah. So she left the door open.
Yeah, sure. The qualifications there, but I have never, her posture is normally, I'm going to do this and I don't care if there's any blowback. And this was a little bit of like, it just was a little bit different response from her than we've seen in the past. And I don't know quite what to make of that, if that means something or not.
Yeah. If she's realizing there is a boundary even within the Republican Party for things you can and can't be a part of.
Yeah. And is the backlash we've all been waiting for? Like, is it starting to happen? I don't know. But jumping back to Trump and his comments about Putin and the peacekeeping force, and then drawing it to the southern border, he kind of sounded like he was a little bit wistful there, didn't he? Like, oh, I wish I had thought of that.
Why didn't I just think?
If I could have just declared parts of Mexico independent and moved our troops in. I mean, just this guy's obsession with the brutal tactics of dictators and his wistful sense of like, why can't I do that too? is just, I mean, it's sickening.
It really is. It's sickening, and I just keep thinking this is the moment that people are gonna be like, I've had enough. I don't throw my lot in with this guy anymore. But it seems to never come. It's an unlimited appetite. Yeah.
Well, I continue to hope that Donald Trump will just continually make himself more and more irrelevant. And, hopefully his aligning himself with Vladimir Putin at this moment when Putin is so kind of near universally vilified. Hopefully it will spiral Trump into further irrelevance.
Yeah. And I wonder too how many people are making the connection that the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, who's become like a worldwide hero and, figure, is the same person that Trump tried to extort and was then impeached for doing so. Like, how many people are making that connection?
Yes. Yeah. I posted about this on Facebook. And Doug and I might have talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember. Most people probably don't know why Donald Trump was impeached the first time. And you're exactly
hard to keep
right.
track of all the.
Yeah, you're exactly right. The first impeachment, Donald Trump had a telephone call with Zelensky when Zelensky won the election, congratulating him on his win. In the midst of that phone call, he urged Zelensky to participate in investigation of Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and their business connections in Ukraine. See, there I'm catching myself like the that former guy did, and what those connections were, along with this idea that Russia interfered with the election and in 2016, and there was military aid that Congress had passed to help Ukraine build up its military because Crimea had happened, and Putin was rattling sabers even back then, and so that pressure that he put on Zelensky led to his impeachment. And it wasn't, once again, so as folks are watching these scenes of Ukrainians defending themselves, keep in mind that Donald Trump withheld money from the United States to Ukraine to bolster its military so that Ukraine could defend itself against Putin. He withheld that for a period of time. It eventually got delivered, but he withheld it for a period of time and tried to use it as extortion, as quid pro quo for Zelensky to do his bidding. Donald Trump, as you're watching these scenes unfold, remember that Donald Trump isn't just siding with Vladimir Putin, but he also put his own political ambitions ahead of Ukrainian people, the Ukrainian people being able to defend themselves. There's nothing more important to Donald Trump than his own political power. And it is, it's a scary and frightening and sad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, something that is not scary, not frightening, is a person running for Congress in Kansas, Kansas 2nd Congressional District. Patrick Schmidt is running for Congress there, and Patrick is joining us today to talk about his story and his race for Congress. Hey, Patrick, how are you? It's good to see you today.
Hi, great to see you. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, listen, let's begin by having you kind of introduce yourself. Tell folks kind of your background and what's led you to run for office.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm a 6th generation Kansan. Grew up in Kansas. Both my parents were elementary school teachers, and the struggles that I've been hearing over the last 8 months sound so familiar to me because they're the ones that I knew growing up. Unfortunately, in Kansas, there's been a consistent, I would almost say, war against education at certain periods in recent history, and something that my family experienced when a former governor tried to balance tax cuts for the people who were most fortunate in the state and the country by slashing education, by closing schools in the middle of the school year. And in my family, it meant that even though both my parents had advanced education, taught for 50 years by the time they retired each, they didn't make enough to raise 2 sons and own their own home. It meant that my family was pushed to the point of bankruptcy as my father struggled with heart disease and COPD, just fairly common but acute conditions. But despite those challenges, they also encouraged me to want to serve like my grandfather did in World War II in the Army Air Corps, and my great grandfather in General Pershing's Army in World War I. And I commissioned as a naval intelligence officer, served on board the USS Ronald Reagan as a fleet intelligence watch officer. And I joke that Tom Cruise gets all the credit in Top Gun, but it's actually the intelligence officers that say, we need to launch jets this way. Here's what we think is coming, whether it's a Russian or Chinese jet, plane, submarine, that sort of thing.
That'll make for a good remake of Top Gun, right? To focus on the naval fleet officers instead of the flyboys.
That's a tertiary goal of this campaign, actually.
Let's make that happen. Yeah,
but still significant. But also had the opportunity to support special forces in the Middle East with a counter Iranian Quds Force mission in Bahrain, and then I was at the Office of Naval Intelligence in Washington D.C. Until last summer, and I was excited because it was the first time that I had the chance to live with my wife in our marriage. But also, unfortunately, while I was there, I saw a terrible crime and attack on this country on January 6th, and I realized that there's all these problems in Kansas and now facing the country, and that there's an opportunity to do something about it in the second district, and have a real economic impact on people's lives, and it was the best way to continue my service.
Yeah. So you're a naval intelligence officer in Washington D.C. when January 6th happens, the insurrection takes place, and you see this taking place, and you think people had all sorts of reactions to that. Your reaction is, I'm going to move home to Kansas and run for Congress.
Well, I think, unfortunately, there are a number of people, including the individual, the incumbent in this seat, that were part of what happened that day, that supported it, that supported a big lie about the election results, election integrity. And, it's there's real cost to that defamation. When I commissioned, I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and to bear true witness to the same. And I think about that second part, right? Bearing witness, responsibility that we see in the church, that we see in public trust, important in public trust, and that's we're also seeing the costs with unraveling of communities, trust in government, and it hurts our ability to do things for the people who need it most, and it's certainly the people who need it most in my district that are struggling with jobs, struggling with education, struggling with access to health, safe, clean drinking water, even. And these are things, that I keep coming back to. That's something I can do in this seat.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to get into your military career, but before that, I want to jump back to your parents being school teachers. My wife is a middle school teacher, and so education is kind of, on the front of my mind and our minds here in Indiana. What are some things that, if elected, you would work toward in Kansas for education?
Sure. So, right now at the one of the big things for K through 12 is that special education in Kansas is not being funded up to the federally mandated level. And I think that's something that needs attention. We have some of the best state community colleges and universities in Kansas, all throughout my district. We've got University of Kansas. We've got Baker in Baldwin City. We've got Pitt State, where my grandmother and great grandmother went. And I think about Pitt State, right? So 1921, my great grandfather dies in a coal mine. And the article in the Pittsburgh Morning Sun the next day noted that my great grandmother was 8 months pregnant with my great grandmother, and so my great grandmother taught until the 50s, when she needed to go to school, new state regulations, to get a bachelor's degree in education to continue teaching. And she got a bachelor's and master's. My grandmother also got a bachelor's in education from Pitt State, and it was a state university that supported my family, that led to a next generation of military officers, of teachers, of lawyers, and special education paraprofessionals. And it was affordable, good public state education. And we're not supporting those universities right now in this district, especially when it comes to IT, when it comes to the industrial base that we have to rebuild after deindustrialization in Kansas over the last 40, 50 years. Those universities, that research base, that industrial base should be front and center of that strategy, and something that I want to be a part of.
Right on. Rob, you got anything? I've got some questions otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do too. So Patrick, as a former naval intelligence officer, do you have any kind of particular insights into what's happening in Ukraine now, and the invasion by Russia? Do you have any? Do you have any? Anything that I don't know what you could share or what you couldn't share, but do you have any takes on this that are different, that
because you were in the China-Russia sphere,
Sure.
right, on the USS Ronald Reagan?
Sure. So it's really hard we take the status quo for granted, and there's plenty of times where the status quo needs to be challenged, but for so much of the Department of Defense's activities, operations all around the world every day, that status quo, our presence, our ability to conduct operations, secure shipment of goods from Kansas wheat, it's the result of battles that we fought 75, 80 years ago. And even throughout, in the case of Europe, throughout the Cold War. And in my case, when I was serving on board the USS Ronald Reagan, the Reagan and the Reagan Carrier Strike Group is the number one, it's the first force that'll be present in the Pacific in any sort of conflagration, any sort of conflict scenario. The Reagan will be there. And the same thing goes for NATO and Europe. Throughout the Cold War, NATO trained to defend Eastern Europe against Soviet aggression. And it's easy to forget that threat is always there when you don't see it. But I think that for 6 years, through the 2016 presidential race, and since then, one party in this country denigrated NATO, and we forget how hard it was to stand NATO up, and that there are real consequences for doing that, and also, I think, aiding and abetting a dictator and authoritarianism all over the world, and supporting anti-democratic forces at home as well. There's real cost to that, and I think the voters in my district understand that. I think voters all over the country understand that, and especially, unfortunately, we've seen the real cost in terms of lives in Ukraine, and what that means for people, for Americans serving in uniform very close to there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's, I guess, one other point that I think about. There's, last time people tried to rewrite orders in Europe of sovereign countries by force. People like General Eisenhower, people like Bob Dole, people like my grandfather were part of the solution to stop it, and protect those countries. And I'm proud of that legacy in my family in Kansas. Proud of what the United States can do now to stop it.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about that legacy, how far do you think it goes when talking across the political spectrum, when reaching across the aisle to Republicans, having that military background, is that helpful in communicating to Republican voters? I know from where I come from, South Bend, Indiana, Mayor Pete, he had his service.
Also, intelligence officer.
Yeah. But talking with my Republican friends, his service went a long way in bridging some gaps. Do you find that in your case as well?
I think so. Anybody who's ever served in uniform with the flag on their arm, and it was a part of a mission, even if it could have been a hard experience, could have been frustrating, but I think a mission-oriented mindset that stays with you enables you to focus in on what's important. It's not the outrage of the day. It's not the headlines. But that's how I think about my service and what I want to do in service for Kansas in this race. And I think that it enables me to start conversations with people who otherwise would maybe not consider it, not be interested, but maybe they want to share their experience. And I've talked to so many people that served in Vietnam, served in Korea, served in World War II. One of the most almost haunting exchanges I've had was, Veterans Day last fall. Leavenworth, Kansas, in my district, has one of the largest Veterans Day parades in the country, and it's at the very start. And I see a guy with a jacket and hat, kind of the Navy veteran style. It says Pueblo, and for those of you that don't know, the Pueblo was an intelligence ship that was off the coast of Korea during the Vietnam War. It was captured by the Koreans. It's the only U.S. vessel that's still held by a foreign country, but held by North Korea.
Oh wow!
And they were prisoners of war for I think over a year. And it's one of the cases that's drilled into every naval officer, especially as they're while they're commissioning, about leadership case studies, stress case studies, and it's important to me because every day people put their lives at risk in uniform, and we owe them a commitment to service that we're people that are aspiring to office and in office are thinking about them and their safety, and that their sacrifice, and that they're worthy of their sacrifice. And I think too often right now, people in Congress are not worthy of their sacrifice, don't take that dedication, that commitment seriously.
Yeah.
I can bring that here.
Yeah. So Patrick, people think of Kansas as a pretty bright red state, right?
Sure.
Is this a winnable race?
Oh, I'm Catholic, but I'm not trying to be a martyr here. This is a district that went for a Democratic governor by 9 points. And also, Kansas has a Democratic governor, and I think we've had an equal tenure of Democratic and Republican governors over the last 50 years. We've got the labor movement started in Kansas and Southeast Kansas because women were fighting so their husbands could have Sundays off to go to church and maybe slightly safer working conditions. Maybe they could work 14 hours a day instead of 16. There's a strong Democratic history in Kansas. My family has been elected in this district. My grandfather was elected mayor of Pittsburgh after he got back from World War II. And also where the population growth has been supports more Democratic candidates in this district. So both the electoral trends, on the issues, what it's going to take to make Kansas a better place to raise your family, grow your business. What do we have to do to serve the people who are least fortunate in our district? Things like expanding healthcare, things like expanding economic opportunities. So, if you grew up in Kansas or maybe you're stationed here, maybe you're stationed at Leavenworth or in Topeka, or those are the two primary military concentration areas in the district. But, there's so much low hanging fruit that will lead to unquestionably better outcomes, better government service, and reap economic dividends for the people that are living here at lower expense to the government. And so I think people have been responding to those sort of common sense solutions and ideas here.
Yeah, great. So, you're not a career politician. You've been in military service and kind of living your life, outside of the political realm. How's running for office different than what you expected? Has there been anything that surprised you? Anything that pull the curtain back for folks that, what's it actually like to do this? What surprised you about it?
I think at the end of the day, everything has my name on it. And I think the challenge, there's a challenge as a candidate to make sure that everything that's happening under your name is consistent with who you are as a person, who you want to be as a representative. I'm so blessed to have people who share my values, my convictions, that are helping in every way possible with this campaign. But it takes a while to find that fit. And it can be really stressful until you find it. So it's, I thought I knew what that would mean, but until you're really in it, you're not all those choices are hypothetical. So that's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago, Marcus Flowers, who's running in Georgia against Marjorie Taylor Greene, I think it was Marcus who said that running a campaign is like starting a business. It's like it's like
you're bankrupt on November 8th.
That's really interesting.
I'm gonna bend down just to plug my computer in really quick.
No problem.
Sorry about that.
No, not an issue. We understand. So as we're winding up this conversation, Patrick, you want to give us a shameless plug? Where can people either that are watching now or going to be listening later, where can they go to find out more about you, to support your campaign, to volunteer, to help you unseat an insurrectionist sympathetic congressperson and help Democrats hold the House by flipping a seat in Kansas? Where can they go to volunteer, to support you, to donate, all that kind of stuff?
Sure. So our website is patrickforkansas.com, all spelled out. And there you can learn more about our campaign. And it also has links to both our Facebook and Twitter. We always need more followers. We always need more people to learn about our campaign, and also let us know how we can be better. what issues you're struggling with in your community, and who could we connect with to learn more about those issues and build out our campaign. I'm super excited to spend more time. I would love to start just knocking on doors all day, really 24/7. But we have to build up the resources to prosecute that field campaign, which is how we're going to win. How we're going to win this race. So you can, the link to our Act Blue page is at the top of our website. Again, that's patrickforkansas.com. I listened to the episode with Marcus Flowers and took quite a few notes from him on how to be a better candidate. But also, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
So
Marcus is great.
Check us out on Facebook. Check us out on Twitter. You guys talked about his info email campaign. My staff, my finance director answers our info email campaign every day. It's info@patrickforkansas.com. I would love to connect with folks, whoever could invest in this campaign, time, resources, and greatly appreciate the support.
Yeah. Absolutely. Patrick, thank you so much for running for office. Thank you for, your service to the country and, your willingness to continue to serve in this way. And we're rooting for you and we're hopefully going to be rolling through Kansas at some point and be able to visit with you face to face and do some stuff with you face to face. But our best to you. And thanks for chatting today.
No, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Showing it there is a way here, and I've been talking you guys up to a lot of the faith leaders in my community. Letting them know about common good, and they're excited to meet you guys. So as soon as I can drag you here or direct you here, really looking forward.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, man. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah. Dan, I got to tell you, once again, we have these conversations with candidates for office, and they have different personalities, they have different backgrounds, they have different areas of expertise, but you just get the sense of these are competent, smart people.
Yeah.
That I would love to have folks like this making decisions in DC about, all of the issues we face as a country.
Yeah.
And Patrick just, he comes off to me as just no nonsense, Enneagram 1, for those of you that are familiar with Enneagram. I don't know, you're not supposed to type other people, but I just get that sense of here's a guy who can assess things, who can figure out what's right and wrong, and who can make the right decisions. That's not about himself. He's about serving other people, and that's his mission. And great, let's do it.
Yeah, and he's going to get after that mission until it succeeds. Yeah, it's just, again, competent people. It's just such a breath of fresh air. It shouldn't be, but just, wow, this guy seems like he knows what he's talking about. He is level-headed and calm and service-oriented.
Yeah, he's not the flashiest candidate, but man, he's just you need some, bread and butter, in a football analogy that Doug would hate if he were with us, but you need that that running play that's going to get you 6 yards. You need that. It's not all bombs to heading towards the end zone. And so I'm just big fan of Patrick, and hope folks will check him out and follow him and help out his campaign as much as possible, because it's a place where I really think he was kind of soft selling it a little bit. I really think this is a district where if things go the right way, Democrats could pull a surprise, and Patrick could be heading to Congress in a way that really shocks people. So
I'd love to see it.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a faith podcast tomorrow?
Yeah, we've got a guest tomorrow. We're talking about the recent attack against trans kids in Texas by the governor. Just a horrible executive order put into place that endangers the lives of trans kids. And so we're going to be talking about that with our guest and talking about how faith leaders and people of faith can protect trans kids. So
fantastic. That's great. Well, Dan, it's great chatting with you today. Doug will be back with us on the Politics podcast next week, and I would guess even on our other podcast this week before it rolls around to Tuesday again.
Yep, he'll be back in the saddle tomorrow. So.
Yeah, enjoy the State of the Union address tonight, and fingers crossed, Jessica Cisneros in Texas 28.
Let's go.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.